Welcome to episode 311 of the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. I am Dave Deacon, and we got a great episode for you. A dear friend of mine is calling it a career after serving producers across the states of Kentucky and Oklahoma for nearly 45 years. Today on the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast, we're talking with Dr. Kim Anderson about his life in a third, and a third. But before we sit down with Dr. Anderson, go ahead and hit the subscribe button where you get your podcasts so you'll never miss a Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast episode. And remember, you can find all of the information we talk about on this and past episodes on our website, reddirtagronomy.com. As always, we start with a quick trip around the table for an introduction to the dream team of dirt and everything that grows from it. Let's start with Oklahoma State University Extension Precision Nutrient Management Specialist.
I mean, it is a who's who of the agricultural world, from machinery to feed to grain and chemical.
Dr. Brian Arnell. And directly across from him in a very squeaky chair is Oklahoma State University Extension Cropping System Specialist.
And as a good economist, it's all about dollars and cents. And that one day you were 10,000 ahead over your career. Where's that value at?
Dr. Josh Lofton. Like so many of our interviews back on the TV show, you saw the perfect intro, but there were plenty of bumpy starts before it. In this episode of the podcast, it was kind of like the good old days. You'll see why in just a minute. You are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. Okay, so I'll start again.
This is one of those Christmas blooper kind of things.
Right, exactly. Okay. So I'll just take it right here. We'll just dive in on the broadcast here. Is it a broadcast? It's not a broadcast, so I'll just on the podcast.
It's almost like you're the paid professional on this thing.
Oh, well, yeah. And the thing, let's see. You and I have always had rough starts on recordings.
Always.
Josh and I have had rough starts on recordings. Kim and I have had rough starts on recordings. So this has worked out. I'll just dive in and say Dr. Kim Anderson's on with us on the podcast, the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. But like I said before,
I'm going to make it. That'd be good. I'm just going to make a little observation. I've not been on the Christmas blooper since you left.
Really? You've been
I don't know what that means
on,
but yeah.
On TV now that I'm not there,
yeah.
that you don't ever have the mess ups.
He's just always so professional.
Right.
It's just
yeah.
just perfect.
Exactly.
And there's no blooper there. I mean, he's just so good.
Yeah.
If you don't believe it, ask him.
Exactly right.
Well, those are the golden tones of one Dr. Kim Anderson. And we all know Kim from years of grain marketing advice across Oklahoma. Should I use the word advice or just because do you give advice or do you just lay it out there?
Yes. A little bit of both. I
Yeah.
think I don't give advice on claiming to be able to predict prices, but I do give advice on potential strategies and the importance of having a mechanical strategy to move the product that you're producing.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been doing that?
I started back in 1980 in Kentucky, and on TV, my first was with Ira Massey on Tabacco Talk.
Really?
And we would go down, and you had those big cameras, and you had the clock right on front of the below the camera there. And I was doing a deal on how many acres of corn you needed to have to afford to own a combine.
Really?
And it was a 15-minute section. And we got to 13 minutes, and I said, I got this sucker nailed. And Ira looks at me, and he says, Kim, do you really expect farmers to do this?
Wow.
And I said, no. But I do hope that while they're going down the road in their pickup to get a part or to deliver some grain, that they'll think about it.
And you got that out in a minute and a half.
And I got that out. Well, I had to get my heart rate down.
Right. Well, so since 1980, all of these years later, you started your extension career at University of Kentucky. Then you came to OSU a few years later. Take it from there. You got all of your degrees here at Oklahoma State. So Kentucky was kind of a He was your going away so that way you could come back home.
When I was at Kentucky, and the people in Kentucky are great. The farmers are great. It's a great state. But my objective was to get back west of the Mississippi. And I had the opportunity to come back to Oklahoma in the crop marketing position. John Eichard was instrumental in bringing me back here. As soon as I hit the ground, of course, I'd been doing TV and radio there. John and I started the TV and with NPR, and we'd tape it and overnight it to Wichita Falls to be broadcast. And I was on Butch and Ben.
Yeah.
In my career, I can't remember if it was the Today Show or Good Morning America. I was on one of those.
Wow.
They flew. Had a meeting at Enid, so they flew into Enid and taped about 20 minutes and used about 15 seconds. But I did.
And then a few years later, Oklahoma State started the Sun Up program, and that's where you and I got to know each other. And not the early days of Sun Up, but later on in the Sun Up program.
That's where we did the barbershop program and the corn program.
Yeah.
Kind of following a hee-haw type format.
Right.
We had a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then later the tailgate talk. I remember that was during the COVID years, whenever we had to do the social distancing. You said, well, what if we were to just chat at the back of your pickup, your world famous 1984 GMC pickup? So we said, yeah, we could do that.
And what was that model of Ford you brought on the trailer to roll out there so you could sit on?
My 1968 F100. Well, and the reason why I brought it on the trailer was because the last time I drove it, the brakes went out, and I thought, whoa! I used it on my final episode on Sun Up, and so I thought, well, I could drive it, but I don't think I could stop it.
Yeah.
So that's why I brought it on the trailer. But no, it was fun to always get creative in presenting your market monitor segments on there.
Well, if it's not fun, it's not worth doing. Remember the criticism we got for the show? When prices were in the tank, they said, quit laughing and having a good time when prices are low.
Yep. Yeah, I was talking with Clinton Griffiths about that, and he said he still remembers that. Even now on Ag Day, he still uses that advice from whenever you're delivering horrible market news, don't smile. He's just trying to make the person feel better about their wheat that they're losing money on. So, but yeah, no, we've had some good times doing the program throughout that time.
I just going to also add in. How many years have you been teaching? I mean, so you hear a lot about Dr. Anderson,
right.
Kim's extension program and his TV, his Sun Up, all these things. But, I mean, you go around the state and there's just a few kids, now probably grandparents, that have been through Kim's classes, and they're world renowned. The people that line up that come in to help support his classes outside of my office for hours on end. So Kim, share a little bit about some of your classes, and you've had some really unique ones and some opportunities for hands-on. That's what I appreciated.
I taught marketing, marketing strategies, hedging, forward contracts, options with farmers. And in 1998, I got the opportunity to teach junior marketing on campus, and I said, if I can teach farmers and agribusiness people, this is a breeze. I went down in flames. I mean, teaching in the classroom is 180 different than teaching out in the real world. And those kids, they taught me some lessons. And then in 2001, I got the opportunity to teach a sales class.
Yeah.
And, I thought I'd be good at that. And I started in January, and I went into it, and it's at 9:30 in the morning, and that's early for the students.
Right.
And, I mean, within 10 minutes, I had half of them asleep. And we had the Super Bowl, and then you had the DVR.
Yeah.
And I taped the ads. And I showed an ad when I started the class, and they were awake, and they stayed awake and listened to me. And they taught me that if I would show an ad, they'd stay awake and listen, and if I wouldn't, they got a nap. So either it was a good lecture or a refreshing lecture. But the sales class, that was the one that's really been successful, where just taught real world, and we taught farm kids how to carry on a conversation and how to build relationships, because that's what life's about and that's what sales is about. I've had a little over 5,500 students go with that. I had a student this last semester tell me her mother went through the class.
Oh, wow.
And or was it her grandmother?
I honestly thought you'd been teaching longer than that, Kim. I thought you'd been teaching on campus, so 98 is quicker than I expected.
Yeah, no, I was 100% extension. And, 82 through 97, and I thought, well, I'd like to take this to the classroom, and got the opportunity. There was no raise years and short of professors, and then they canceled the junior marketing course and said we're going to have a sales course, which is not very prestigious to teach. And nobody wanted to teach it, and I knew nothing about sales, but I said, I'll do it.
Sure.
Well, Dave Downing at the University of Kentucky had spent 25 years putting the course together, and he gave me everything he had.
Wow.
Gratis.
Wow.
Now they charge you a lot of a leg for it, but he gave it. And that's at the foundation. And then the salespeople in the state taught me sales. Jay Albright let me come out and sell John Deere tractors one summer.
How cool.
Yeah, he asked me one morning, says, Kim, how's it going? I said, well, Jay, I don't think I've cost you any money today.
When did you bring in that hands-on portion of the Ready, Set, Sell where you got people? Was that right off the bat when you started sending the students out into, let's say, the real world, or was that a kind of a transition into doing that?
Dave Downing had a SWAS, Sashay with a salesperson. Spend a day with a salesperson, and then he had Ready, Set, Sell, but he had it over an afternoon, and they'd come in and scheduled. And Monsanto had given me a $5,000 unrestricted grant to make some no-till budgets for them. Mm-hmm. And so I took that as seed money, and I said, let's have a dinner. And we'll ask the salespeople to put up some money to pay for the dinner.
Yeah.
And we'd get in, 35, 40 salespeople to role play the buyer for 3 students each. And only one semester from January of 2001 through this last semester, only one semester did I not have enough money to pay for the dinner.
Wow.
And that was the support you had from the salespeople.
It's a who's who. I mean, because they line up outside my office, which is a conference a lot of the times, not every time, but I'm right across from the conference, and Josh is at least catty corner. But I mean, it is a who's who of the agricultural world, from machinery to feed to grain and chemical.
Warren Catt. Yep. I mean, they used to sit 8 or 10 salespeople. You've got Yellow House over in town. You've got Coke Industries.
Yeah.
Coke Fertilizer. You just name them, and but the reason they're lined up out there. Yes, we have the course, but they want to hire the kids into the College of Agriculture. The Ferguson College of Agriculture has that reputation that our kids will work. They'll show up for work. They will do a job, even if it's the low-end job. They know, they've been in the barn lot, and they've shoveled the manure.
Yeah.
And they can for sure do a job for you. And those people, industry people, know it. And this is the opportunity for them to get to know, and for the students to get to know them. And so I can claim it for the class. But they're here to hire our kids, because we have good students.
Just as a refresher, just kind of explain how Ready, Set, Sales work.
Well, each student selects, they get to select a product that they're going to sell, and they have to do a 12 to 15-minute sales presentation. We have a real salesperson here to role play the buyer for 3 different students, and it's a 2-hour period there. Now, I will say, you talked about early on, I think it was the second semester, and I wasn't really paying any attention. I didn't have things organized, and I wasn't paying attention to products and salesperson. Well, I had one young man that I didn't notice what product he had. I just matched him up with this female salesperson, and then I noticed that he was selling Viagra.
fantastic.
So when the salespeople came in, that we meet before they got separated, I said, hey, I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, and one of your students is selling Viagra, and she says, I'll take care of him.
Oh, wow.
But I had one female salesperson, maybe they were selling seed or fertilizer or whatever, and the kids would go out and, they'd talk about the roles they were playing, and the kid would go out in the hall to come in, and the kid went out in the hall, and she crawls under the desk, and he comes in, and she says, hand me a tool. And she had some wrenches up there, and he got to selling her the stuff, and she's working on her equipment.
Oh, wow.
I mean, these salespeople really get into it.
That's pretty smart. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a notorious or infamous or famous or whatever you want to call that class. So I want to go back. I assume you taught it over COVID. So how did you have to adjust that during the COVID time? Okay,
I believe that the students wanted to be in the classroom, and I wanted to be in the classroom. During COVID, I taught in a gym over in the Hyper Center in 2 gyms one semester, and the next semester I was in the ballroom of the student union, which is 20 yards deep and 50 yards wide. Now, the students, what I had them do was, we couldn't bring the salespeople in, so they would get their salesperson and get with them, and they'd have to video the presentation. Now, the presentation isn't a formal presentation. It's carrying on a conversation like we're doing here. And so they would video that. I have some great videos as examples of that I used in future years. And so I guess we did that for 3 semesters. Otherwise, the salespeople were here and the students were here, and we just did it. Maybe we pushed the envelope a little bit on COVID, but both the salespeople and the students wanted it that way, and we did it.
I know teaching lab classes and stuff like that, that was such a weird time for getting students that hands-on experience. And that was, I think anybody takes that class, ready, set, sell, whether they remember anything else from the other days of the year, they remember that time. And it's one of those things that during COVID, if you had to take that away, that's a big part of that class that you take away.
The way they did the Sashay with the salesperson was they did it with Zoom, because that's what the salespeople were having to do. So they would just join in on the Zoom calls that the salespeople would have with their customers. And I tell the salespeople and students, and they tell me too, without the Sashay with the salesperson, the day with the salesperson, which they bellyache about that, not the students until they do it.
Yeah.
And then they say, that's the best experience I've had. And then they do Ready, Set, Sell night. Without those 2 activities, all you'd have is a lecture course. And they'd be sleeping.
Right.
Explain Sashay, because, we know exactly what you're talking about, but explain Sashay with the salesman.
The students, you're plant soil science students. Well, they will get with a Coke fertilizer, or they'll get with, maybe a grain elevator. They're agronomists, or they'll get with seed dealers or crop insurance. They will select a salesperson in an area that they're interested in, and we recommend, if you want to go to work for what's one of your Bear,
yeah.
Yeah, if they want to go, then find you a Bear salesperson, because when you apply, you're going to apply on a computer. But if you have a Bear salesperson you've spent a day with, you can tell them, hey, I want to go there, and they'll go to bat for you.
Yeah.
And they'll call HR and say, hey, move this up to the top. And those kids do that.
I didn't realize the kids actually found the salesperson. I thought there was a list they picked from. So they're actually responsible for identifying that. I like that.
That's their first sales call.
Yeah. Perfect.
They say, well, how do I do that? Well, that's why they're lined up in your office saying, hey, can you help me find a salesperson? They don't know it. Prioritize prospects, develop a strategy and a call plan, build a relationship. Right there, you're helping them prioritize prospects. And they go to the different faculty around, line up in your office and say, hey, I need some help here.
And all of this culminates with a dinner, a big event. Kind of talk about that. I mean, you've done that. How many years have you put on the
Well, every semester but 3.
Okay.
And every semester's been out at meditations. It started with Maureen Razuk, who built meditations, and then moved on to Candace, and I forget her husband's name. But all I did was we set a date and they took care of it.
Yeah.
Oh man, their dinners were just out of this world.
Yeah.
The salespeople loved it. The students loved it. I would tell the students, if you want to hear beautiful music, about halfway through the meal, stop and listen, because what you hear is students teaching salespeople and salespeople teaching students. And salesperson after salesperson, you ask, why do they come? They say, I never come that the student doesn't teach me something.
Yeah.
Or I will be telling them, well, look at doing this, and I'll recognize, I might ought to start doing that.
Yeah.
And it makes them evaluate what they do, and they're teaching, but they're also learning. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's nothing but spectacular.
So to go back, you started your career 100% extension, then you picked up this teaching role, but you've still been doing tremendous extension in the States. So how has this changed that whole teaching while you're teaching? How has this changed your whole extension program since you picked up these classes?
Dave Deacon.
Oh, this guy.
Cheers, Dave.
I'll answer that.
Well, in end of 1983, December of 83, Calvin Pigg, who was the editor for Southwest Farm Press, called me and asked me if I would write a column. And I told him that I'll get back to you on that. And I thought about it, and I called Calvin. I'll write articles for Southwest Farm Press, but I want a column, and I want to be in every issue, and you've got to teach me how to write. And he said, done. And I did it for a couple months, and he calls me and he says, Kim, I got good news and bad news. And I thought, well, I failed this, didn't I?
It was a fun run.
Yeah. He said, the bad news is your articles are too long. We got to cut them. Said, we don't make money off your articles. We make money off of ads, and every word you have takes space away from ads. So shorten your articles. And he said, I said, well, what's the other good news? And he said, well, I'm going to pay you twice as much as I did for the articles. And I think he went from $50 to $100,
right.
And that's pretty much where I ended up. The column in Southwest Farm Press, it's incredible what you can teach farmers in Oklahoma, Texas, and New Mexico, 620 words at a time, twice a month. And then we had Sun Up and TV. And it's incredible what you can teach in a 2.5 to 5 minute slot every week. Barry Pollard, I'm sitting at the Olive Garden in Edmond with my wife, and this short guy comes over and says, hey, Kim, I've been down with Boone's and Burns, and we've been talking about, and I said, I know this guy.
I better know this guy.
How do I know this guy?
Yeah. And a third, and a third. I don't know how many people. Kim Anderson, a third, and a third. And it's because every week they'd hear me, a third, and a third, and a third. Or every week they'd talk a strategy, and 620 words at a time in a column, or 2.5 to 5 minutes on TV every week. What do they say? It takes 9 or 10 times for somebody to hear something to remember it.
Yep.
Well, you get to do that. Well, Dr. Kuhn, before he left, out at the RSS night, I introduced him, and he said a few words, and he roasted me. And one of his roasts was, he said, it amazes me. Kim gets on TV every week, says the same thing, and gets away with it. People still listen.
Yeah.
I learned early on, Kentucky, Tobacco Talk, doing the column on Southwest Farm Press and doing Sun Up, and then getting to do the other major international farm publications. It gives you credibility. You've got to be smart if you're Dave's guest.
I make everybody look smart.
Also, you don't have to go out. And if you do go out, you got an audience because you're famous. I mean, my dad's in the hospital in Muskogee, and I'm going up the elevator, and a guy says, are you Kim Anderson? And I said, yes. He says, I watch you on TV.
Yeah.
So
Must have been a toll booth operator.
Yeah, probably was.
I get that.
Yeah. But it's the media, using the media, and you don't have to go out as often. And during COVID, AgInfo did a deal for Dr. Schramm on our contacts. My contacts was at 22 million plus.
Wow.
I was interviewed by Japan NPR.
Wow.
Which is broadcast in 18 different languages. I got to listen to myself speak Japanese.
Wow.
It's the media.
Yeah.
Use the media.
So I'll kind of double up. How did the teaching change the way you extended?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the students taught me avoid lectures much, but like extension out in the real world is really different than the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
But Kent Prickett, retired manager from Pond Creek Co-op.
Yeah.
After a presentation over at Enid, he says, "Kim, that was really a good academic presentation." And I said, The next time I was invited to talk, I grabbed a stool and I just chatted with them.
Yep.
I didn't lecture them.
Yeah.
You can lecture, and you have to lecture to a certain degree in the classroom.
Yeah.
You got to bring in other real-world stuff, but you have to lecture. In the real world, you need to just carry on a conversation with them. One of probably my best ever presentation to a farm audience, I was down in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma Grain and Feed were having their annual whatever with their booths and everything, and I'm out there, and Joe Hampton and Ronnie Trulock from Alva said, "Hey, Kim, we need you to do a presentation." I said, "How long?" He said, "An hour." And I said, "When?" And he said, "Right now."
Jeez.
Said, we didn't have a speaker show up.
Yeah.
And I go in there and I asked the audience, and it's elevator personnel.
Yeah.
And they said, "Just talk about marketing." Well, they don't care about marketing. I said, "What was the speaker supposed to talk about?" And he said, "Raising canola." And I said, "Anybody in here sell canola seed?" And I had 3 salespersons sitting pretty close to the front. And I said, "Any farmers in here raise canola?" And I had another 3 over there. And I said, "Well, I just bought 160 acres in Muskogee County on the river, and I want to raise canola. Where do I start?" And I just interviewed those 6 guys for an hour, and that's the best presentation I never gave.
Well, it is. I mean, teaching and extension work and just any public speaking is just facilitating a conversation, and that worked out for you in that situation.
And
I attribute my success. Well, I came from Kentucky, and I was going to stamp out ignorance in marketing. And I went out, and I got audiences, and the farmers came, and they listened to me, and they even tried some of the stuff.
Yeah.
But they always went back to doing what they were doing beforehand. And I said, And so I went back and did some research to see which one of us was right. And they were.
Oh, okay.
And I contend that the good stuff that I use in teaching extension is what I learned from successful farmers.
Yeah.
I got some mentors out there, some successful farmers and agribusiness people to mentor me, to teach me how it really works.
Yeah.
And it was in the same way in the classroom. Salespeople taught me about sales. It's not what you know, it's who knows you.
Even better.
Yes. And they would teach the students would write the paper up, they'd put that in a paper and say, "That's good." It's not what you know, it's who knows you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not about me.
Right.
It's about you.
Yeah.
And they taught me that stuff to teach in the classroom. My PhD gave me a foundation of agribusiness, marketing, economics. But and you got to have that foundation. And Wade Borson asked me what I taught farmers once, and I told him what I taught farmers. And he asked me a second way how I taught farmers, and I told him. And he asked me a third way, a different way, and I told him a different way. He says, "Kim, all you're doing is making them feel good." I said, "That's exactly correct." Because if they feel good about what they're doing, and my research shows that 80% of it's right, then they're willing to tweak and improve what they're doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's what farmers taught me.
Well, speaking of something that you have taught farmers over the years, where in the world did you come up with a third?
Okay. I was down at Altus. Now, I did tell the cotton producers down there that I was going to do for cotton what I'd done for wheat, and they never invited me back. But that's another story. Well, they're in the pool.
Yeah.
But we'd had a meeting, and a white Ford pickup was hauling it down the street, came to a screeching halt in the back of it, backed up, came flying through the parking lot, about ran over 3 people, rolled down the window, and it was Robbie Robbins.
Oh, okay.
And he was on the Board of Regents at the time.
Yeah.
And I was with Murray Williams talking to Murray, and Robbie said, Kim, I lost $20,000 on my wheat this year. How should I sell it? And I said, Robbie, you're south of I-40. Just sell it at harvest. You cross the scales, just sell it. I mean, it goes down after it clears I-40. He said, no, it can't be that easy. How should I sell it? I said, Robbie, yeah. And we go on, and I said, okay, Robbie, if you don't want to sell it at harvest, just sell a third of it at harvest, a third of it September, October, and the final third November. You only lose 4 or 5 cents over time, but if that makes you feel better, do that. And Robbie looks at me and he says, Kim, if it's that easy, what do we need you for?
The regent said that.
The regent said that. And Murray, I'm gasping for air, seeing my job go up in smoke.
Right.
Murray says, well, Robbie, you need to keep Kim around because in 2 or 3 years you're going to have a case of the stupids. You need him to remind you. But that's where I got a third and a third and a third.
Thinking on your feet, just like that.
Just like that. Got it from a farmer.
Yeah.
So, Kim, if you look over your career in media, how has media or your approach to media in your position changed, or has it always been the same? You'll give it a whirl.
Oh, I think I learned early on that media doesn't give you intelligence, but it gives you credibility. People, and I've got emails from all over the world, Denmark, Norway, Australia. I used to a big farmer in Australia email, and we used to email back and forth. I learned early on. I was introduced to it in Kentucky, but John Eichard really taught me the value of it and got me to doing it vigorously in Oklahoma, and I saw the value of it early on. And now I'll throw in one other thing that I always did that I understand some people doesn't do, but I always return a phone call, and it often takes a lot of time. But they will see you on TV, they'll read you hear you on the radio, and they'll call you. And the first thing they'd say when I call them back is, "Thank you for calling." I say, "Well, I'm your tax dollars at work. What do you expect?" He said, "Well, you'd be surprised how many don't."
Yeah.
And so with that exposure, and the other thing I learned from the telephone calls, they call me and they say, I had a guy call me once. He says, "Kim," he said, I'm wanting to sell my wheat. When should I sell it? And I had learned that he really didn't want me to tell him when to sell his wheat. He wanted me to listen and ask him questions of what he was going to do, and then confirm that what he was going to do wasn't stupid.
Right. So for the audience out there that doesn't have video of this, both Josh and I are shaking our heads because as an extension specialist, our calls are more of affirmation.
Yes, that's what mine are.
We're just a sounding board most of the time.
I had a guy call me from Kansas, and he was asking me, he was going to sell his wheat. And I asked him questions, and I can't remember how many bushels, but I penciled out the price. It was $398,000 worth of wheat. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, you might do this." He said, "Well," I said, "Well, you might try this." He said, "Well," I said, "You might try this." "You might try." "Oh, yes, I like that," he says. I said, "Do it." And I was smarter than a tree full of owls, and all I did was listen. But they really want somebody to listen. And every once in a while, you'll have to say, you might want to, check that out a little bit. You might want to think about that. You never tell them they're wrong, but you might say, you might want to try this, or you might want to try that.
And I don't know if this might be one of those things that Dave edits out, but if we look at, if you step outside the box and you look at others in the profession, whether it's extension or whatever, there doesn't seem to be many that, for me at least, that understands the value of media. It's starting to become better, but if I look at, my age or even older, it seemed like there was a fear of media.
Well, you have to be careful. Early in my career, I'd get invited to go play golf with the elevator people, and Union Equity had just gotten a contract with Santa Fe Railroad, and it was a confidential deal. But playing golf with them, you learned about it, and I came back, and Dan Crummett, who was over in Ag Affirmation, calls me and says, "Kim, I understand they got a." I said, "Dan, we don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole." He said, well, I would just like to have a little background information. I said, okay. And he came over and visited with me, and I went up to Kansas State and did a 3-day workshop, came back, and it went well. I was doodly-bopping down the hall, and Gus Page says, Kim, what in the hell have you been telling the press? And I said, what? And Beth Lilly, the Enid Eagle, had written an article about that, and the only person quoted that wasn't an unidentified source was me, and the quote was, is a union equity Santa Fe contract may cause a rate war.
Oh, no. Oh, jeez.
Oh,
And-
Dan.
So Gus Page and I got in Gus's car and went over to Union Equity. First, I had to chase down Crummett, who wasn't there, but I got the article, and the stuff he had released was nothing that wasn't public. But from that, they'd gotten my name and that quote about it may cause a rate war. Okay, big thousands. Okay. But we went over and showed it to Gerald Frazier and Bill Allen and visited with them a while, got everything calmed down. That's sales. You got an objection, you solve it right now. But the point of this story is you've got to know you got to be careful with reporters. You know, you got Ron Hayes and Casey, and you got those that you can trust. And so you know which ones you can talk to. You can say this is a sensitive subject, and they'll check back with you before they print it.
Yeah.
So, yes, dealing with the mass media, you got to be careful because you can, and nothing, zero goose egg nada is off the record.
Yeah, that is so true. What has been your favorite part of your overall extension work? Is it the hours of driving across the state? Is it just the contact with the people? Is it the Lahoma Field Day? Is it the sun-up episodes?
Let me tell this story. I'm in Texas. I'm in Amarillo for a wheat meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're familiar with this.
Yes.
I was at a wheat meeting, and they're having the big farmers are having a reception the evening before, and I'm at the reception. This big farmer comes in and says, Kim, I've been reading your stuff at Southwest Farm Press. You made me $20,000 this year. I said, well, you made the decisions. And I go on, and this guy comes up and said, I've been reading your stuff in the Farm Press, and it's cost me $10,000. And I said, well, at least I'm $10,000 ahead.
Right.
The most rewarding part is farmers talking to you, sharing their knowledge, their experiences, teaching you, and also really telling you how much they appreciate what you do.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of accolades in this job, and farmers are very generous with their compliments. And gosh, you can go home just feeling smarter than a tree full of owls. And really all you did was listen to what they had to say.
Yeah.
And that is really a big part of extension, is not telling them what to do. It's listening to them tell you what they're doing, because they're teaching themselves, and they create a conversation. And in the conversation, you give them little nuggets. And if you do it right, and you're probably good at that, they go home and it's their idea.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, they're glad they thought of that. And I pat myself on the back and say, what a good boy am I, But it's just, their rewards are phenomenal. Southwest Farm Press, I do that for free. Sign up, I do for free.
I got to add in before we let him go. I've got a little beef with Kim.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a good way to end up.
Yeah, it is, right? Yeah. And so his double retirement is because, back on the first retirement at Lahoma is an amazing going away. And I'm still remembered because I was with you at that stop when you popped open the trunk and played As the Cowboys Ride Away. That was cited as one of the most memorable things about my extension program. As I was there when Kim did his going away.
Oh, you were right next to me, weren't you?
Next to you, same stop. And now that's gone.
That's gone.
And then he shows up 90 days later.
Yeah.
Wait.
Well, walking away from this, there's a time to do it.
Yeah.
And it's time, but gosh, I'm going to miss it. I mean, it's just, the rewards. How can you leave that? And they appreciate you so much, recognizing how important they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how much knowledge and experience and gut-wrenching stuff they do. You recognize the Teddy Roosevelt, dust, sweat, and blood, and supporting that.
Okay, Kim, I don't have a beef with you because I wasn't invited to the Lahoma Field Day.
His beef is with others.
I was going to say his beef is in a different direction.
If you were to talk to, young ag students or growers that are getting into it, besides a third and a third and a third, you can't say that. What's the one thing marketing wheat? What's your take home of all these years?
It changes over time. Right now, in Oklahoma, you've got to sell wheat in June, July, and August.
He's just saying a third,
right?
Just a shorter period of time.
A third, and a third is not enough.
Yeah.
The average spread, a price spread in June, July, and August is $1.80.
Holy crap.
The lowest ever is 80 cents. This is since 2009. And the highest is about $3.60. Well, this month the price has been at Pond Creek from $5.35 to $6.70. It was $6.70 on June 1 and ended up at $5.35. That's a $1.35 spread in 1 month. And it'll change 25, 30 cents a day sometimes. So you got to scatter it. You got to do at least a fifth, a fifth, a fifth, a fifth, a fifth. I like to say a 16th at a time, But you got to stagger it over time. And really, don't listen to marketing economists. Don't listen to market. And if anybody says they can predict prices, they're lying through their teeth. But what I can say is prices are going to change, and they're going to average out. And if you pull the trigger at one time, you're just betting that it's either the high or the low. And we're at the low now. But now at Lahoma this time, I said $6.
Yeah.
Well, we've averaged June $5.85, but we're up this week. We hit that $5.35. We're back up to $5.60. Well, it can easily get back to $6.70. It just depends on Russia. But just have a mechanical marketing strategy. You've got to keep up with prices over time, see what they do over time. You're betting on the average, but I practiced this, Dave. I was going to talk about the averages, average yield, average price. If you got 1 foot in a bucket of ice water and 1 foot in a bed of hot coals, on the average, you're comfortable. So what you got to do, you got to jump from one to the other. You got to stagger it out over time.
No different than the average rainfall in Oklahoma.
There you go.
From 0 to 100.
Well, I've had a standing bet for 40 years started with Billy Tucker. I will bet you I can get close in the fall to the next June price that you can the yield in any field. Because research shows you there's more yield variability than price.
Yeah. Right.
And you put those two together, Jiminy Christmas, you want to be, that's gut-wrenching to be a farmer. And they're not correlated. You can have high prices and low yield, or high prices and high yields. You can have low prices and low yields.
Right.
Or vice versa. You don't know what you're going to have.
Yeah.
So you got to be like what the average yield in Oklahoma, 32 bushels, 34 bushels. You got to produce 50 or 60 on the average. Production's where it is. But it's like I said, they can tell you about production, but if you can't put it into dollars and cents, you don't know anything.
Exactly.
Well, and as a good economist, it's all about dollars and cents. And that one day you were 10,000 ahead over your career. Where's that value at?
Good question. Good question.
Are you at a zero average?
Breaking even at least.
Breaking even.
Okay. I got back years ago, but I got 9 years from 3 different elevators of every purchase they made for a 9-year period. And I calculated how good a job versus the average market price Oklahoma producers did. And I believe it was around 70% of them sold in the upper half.
Wow.
So I'm above average, okay? I'd have to say I'm average. You really don't know, but I'd say I was above average if you could put a pencil to it, because in Oklahoma we have this opportunity to sell during the harvest period. And if you sell during this harvest period, over time, you're above average on price. And I'm above average because if a producer is comfortable with how they're selling their product, they're not going to lose sleep at night worrying about whether they should sell or buy or whatever. Because if they're worried about that, they're going to lose sleep, and if they lose sleep, then they're going to make a mistake. They're going to forget to do something with their equipment. They're going to forget to close a date. They're going to forget that's going to cost them more money than they could have ever made or lost selling. And so that fact alone, making them comfortable with how they sell their product on their profit situation, is going to increase that profit because it's going to minimize mistakes in other areas. It's going to give them more time to select their soil fertility, to check the soil fertility, not forget to do the soil test. It's the weed application, or to manage the production side of it. It's going to give them more time to do that. So I'm above average.
So speaking of more time, I think this has been, your career at OSU has been what, 40 some odd years, 42 years, and now, I mean, you're retiring. What are your big plans for retirement? Are you going to go volunteer in the Congo? Are you going to go on a world expedition submarine cruise?
Got ready, set, sail to plan for.
Ready, set, sail.
I don't have to do that. The hardest thing about ready, set, sail is getting the right number of salespeople here, because in the last 5 days, you're going to lose 5 or 6 salespeople.
Yeah.
But you can't come into 5 days out and have 5 or 6 extras, because then if you don't need them, you got to tell them I don't need you. But anyway, let's go back to
your retirement.
What I'm planning on.
Yeah.
I've been practicing retirement a little bit in the last couple of weeks, okay? I'm a plan guy. I want to have everything, strategy and plans. I want it choreographed out. But I don't know what's on the other side of that door. I figured out that retirement, the biggest problem is not having a plan and everything. It's all psychological. Because, this last weekend on Saturday, we all have Saturdays. We have our Saturday chores, right?
Yep.
And I had my Saturday chores, but I'm thinking, what am I going to do today? I'm retiring. What am I going to do? I'm not motivated to do anything because every day's Saturday. So my biggest worry about retirement is not what I'm going to do. Catherine and I are going to go to Branson. We're in no hurry. We can go to Branson anytime, but we're not motivated.
Yeah.
So it's psychological. And when you get into farming, the majority of your decisions, the soil fertility, the seeds you go to plant, the tractor you buy, it's psychological. And what did I tell him at Lahoma this last time? Keith Kisling said, "How do I sell my wheat?" And I said, "What's going to let you sleep tonight?"
Yep.
Make a decision that lets you sleep at night, and it'll work out for you.
Yeah.
And in retirement, I just got to make them a decision that lets me sleep at night. And right now, the problem I see is motivation to get something done. But if I go in and sit down and read, I'm bored in 30 minutes. So I can't twiddle my thumbs.
Yeah.
But I'm not motivated to do anything. So I've got to figure out how to psychologically manage my time.
Not bad for a kid from Wainwright, Oklahoma.
With a class of 13.
Yeah.
And thank God for Wayne. For the kid that his teacher said, "Don't worry about going to college. You don't have what it takes."
You proved him wrong.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Kim Anderson, thank you so much for coming in and chatting with us on the Red Dirt Agronomy podcast. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you very much. It has been fun.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you for listening in on this conversation of the Red Dirt Agronomy podcast. If you would like to join the next discussion, send us an email, podcast@reddirtagronomy.com, or send us a tweet. Our handle is Red Dirt Ag. We would like to thank Dr. Kim Anderson for joining us on the podcast, and congratulations on your retirement. If you get a chance, head over to our website, reddirtagronomy.com, to find out more information about our guests and any of the resources that we discussed on the podcast today. So for Dr. Josh Lofton and Dr. Brian Arnell, I am not a doctor, but I play one on a podcast, Dave Deacon, and we all want to thank you for listening. The proceeding is a copyrighted recording of Ag Now Media, LLC, 2024. And yes, all rights are reserved.